Ah, beautiful, beautiful. Do you want to do the introduction for us, please, bro?
Yes, I will. Good afternoon to listeners and viewers alike. This is our weekly podcast called The Alien Spaceship. I am Trevor Gere, and he calls me Bruv.
And I am Emmy Hickens, and he calls me Cos. Welcome to the Alien Spaceship. Ah, I'm in
Over
the
to
hot.
you, Cuz.
I'm in the hot seat today. I am in the hot seat today. Okay. Um. So it's just yeah. So I've got a few things here that we can talk about. Oh no, I've got the football one. We don't want the football one. We want this one. Right, okay. So, now should everyone get a compassionate leave when a pet dies? What do you think, bro?
Well, that's throwing me a loaded question, I reckon. Um, that's a really good question because if you are a pet person, then I guess your instincts will be to say yes. Whereas
Okay.
for somebody who may not have pets and never has had pets, they may say, well, it seems a bit much. Obviously, if it's a family member, that's one thing. But
Mm,
then animals, I guess, can become family members to lots of people. For me, I think I grew up and we had, trying to think what we had. We had a dog and the usual little hamster things, I seem to remember. But a dog we did have. And I suppose when I think of relatives and friends, many have had dogs over the years. Now, my sister, who actually died from lung cancer
so I
just
guess
about
can
three
become
years ago to the
relevant
day,
to
I
a lot
think
of
it was,
people.
she had a little sausage dog, a dachshund, which she called Harry. And she'd had him, I think, for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. And
Mm,
before that, she'd had another dog, which she'd had for a long, long time and it died. And for 2 or 3 years, quite a long time, she said that she wasn't going to get another dog. I guess when somebody loses an animal like that, they think, well, that I can't replace the love I had for that animal, so I won't bother. Anyway, after 2 or 3 years, whatever it was, she decided she would get another dog. So, and she was living on her own. Her partner, her husband, had died actually not that long before.
yeah.
And she got this dog, and what, by all accounts, after 2 or 3 weeks, she took it back to where she got it from. I think it was one of these League of Animals places, because it was just simply too jumpy, too noisy, too yappy. And
Mm,
Sue, my sister, she loved dogs, so it must have been quite a noisy, yappy dog for her to say that. So
yeah.
anyway, she sent that one back, and once again she said, "Well, I'm not going to get a dog." Well, she did. I think probably a few weeks, a couple of months went by, and she sort of got in touch and said, "Oh, Trev, I've got another dog," which in due course we went down to see, and this was Harry, who was with her for, as I say, 6, 7 years, the last 6 or 7 years of her life. Now, actually, in my song, Still My Sister, I mention Harry and something along the lines that he was her little boy. He really was. He was, I think, in some ways, he behaved more affectionately than even affectionate dogs can because he was so loved and cuddled and treated like a real member of the family that he became just like that. And it was hard to see her ever being separated from him. But sad to say, when her illness became very, very bad in the last few weeks, really, she had no choice but to ask a friend of hers. She lives some way away from me, but a friend of hers to take Harry, which she did. And saw it, and Sue went into a hospice for the last few days, really, of her life. But we saw Harry's new owner, a lady called Deborah,
Mm.
and she had two other dogs anyway, so she now had three dogs. And we said at the funeral, "How's Harry getting on?" And although she clearly is an animal lover, she sort of just about raised her eyebrows and said, "My goodness, he's so he's so difficult. And I suppose having gone from Sue, who he knew and loved for so many years, to a new situation where he was one of three dogs, it wasn't easy for him. But anyway, we did subsequently see her a few months after that, and she said he had settled down quite a lot. But I've sometimes wondered since, because I don't really know that lady much, very well. I've often wondered how is he getting on because he was so attached to Sue. Now, long story that really, but to say in Sue's case, although she wasn't working the
Mm.
last few years of her life, she would undoubtedly have wanted some leave, compassionate leave, if she had been working. And I think she would have probably taken it anyway. And I can understand people doing that. A dog, a cat, particularly dogs and cats, I guess, are very special to owners. And you get very, very attached to them, as we all know. So would I agree to compassionate leave? I mean, again, we've got the other side, I guess, is if you're running a business and you've got staff, they have the rights to take time off for childcare and all sorts of other things when children are born. So would I say as a businessman, I go along with compassionate leave? I guess I would say I would probably say yes. I'll give somebody a day's leave if I was a businessman. But where do you draw the line? Is someone going to say, "Oh, no, I'm so heartbroken, I want a week off"? Well, I'm not sure that would work. But yeah, I think on balance, I think probably all situations should be looked at independently. If a person loses their animal and it is treated just as a pet, well, they may not even want time off for that. But I guess depending on the circumstances, maybe a day, even two, a day or two would be compassionate.
Yeah, yeah, I thought so as well. I mean, I've never owned a pet, so I wouldn't know how it feels for
No,
somebody that, somebody that's lost a pet or somebody that owns a pet. But I do love animals. I do. I really do love animals. They're just exciting to look at and to play with, especially
yeah,
dogs. Cats not so much because they like doing their own thing. But dogs, I love dogs. But never actually owned a dog because I'm just afraid I might just leave it one day and then forget to feed it.
I'm sure you wouldn't.
I'm like, well, I might just forget. I'm sure I wouldn't. Yeah, but it's just it's the added responsibility that you get, which is okay because you get more in return from the love that the dog or a cat shows you. Um, I think it was there was a neighbor that came the other day to the house and he had two dogs and they were both pugs. And one of the pugs just walked past Jeanette at the door. I was in the living room, and he just walked past, went through the kitchen, and just came into the living room, took one look at me, walked around as if he was inspecting the room, and then walked back out. And I stood there and I thought, what was that about?
Yeah,
Anyway, the guy was still on the at the door, just chatting away with Jeanette. And then when he left, she came back in and she said, "Oh," and then that she said, "Oh, that was this that," and she mentioned the name of the dog, and she said, "Oh, the neighbor that lives across the road to us, and that's her brother, and I used to look after the dogs." Ah, so it made sense to me that the dog just walked past her, and then walked straight into the living room. He
yeah,
said they,
yeah.
he said both. She said both of them used to just play around in the living room, and just and I thought, oh, that's why. So he said the dog it must have brought back, memories. And
Mm.
it just struck me how intelligent animals are. He said it must have brought back memories for the dog. He said the other one just went into the garden because he likes playing in the garden as well. I thought, oh my days, that's it. And he cannot not love animals. They just really, it's just taking care of them is what, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
because
yeah.
yeah, go on,
Just to
please.
say, you say how clever dogs can be, and you think they use them. They use them at football grounds, don't they? When people are going in to seek out anything, I guess, explosive or drugs. And of course, in airports as well, they are trained to a high degree. One of one of her colleagues, a lady, a few years ago, she had a very bad accident. Now, I don't know what it was. It may have been that she came off her push bike. But
Mm.
anyway, she damaged her head and had a bleed on the brain and things like that. And the upshot of that was that she was not allowed to drive now and various other things. But the worst thing I think is that sometimes, possibly on a daily basis, once or twice, she will just faint. She literally just falls to the floor. And actually, it was quite nice. She got married a couple of weeks ago to a guy who I think has some kind of similar problems, but they obviously make a very nice couple. I don't know them, but this lady, she has a dog, and when Kimberly goes into the office to have meetings, etc., the dog is always there with this lady. But the clever thing is, the dog alerts this lady when she's going to faint. So
Wow.
she sits down. I don't think she has a wheelchair, but she wherever she is, she'll sit down, um, and then she faints. But luckily, she's not going to fall to the ground. Now, I've talked to Kimberly about this because she's seen the dogs do this, and in fact, this dog has been with her now for 7 years, and it sounds strange, but. He's going to retire this year, I think, in September. Now that sounds weird. She's going to keep him, but he's going to retire from this work he does. So for the last 2 or 3 months, she's been training up a younger dog alongside the existing one, who in his own way is also training the little dog, and they're training this little dog to do whatever they do. These dogs to detect a little while before, and I think you're probably talking. I don't know, but maybe a minute or so before she's going to faint,
Mm.
they detect that. I believe, I believe I'm right in saying that occasionally she'll have some sort of seizure, and the dog alerts her to that as well. So the great thing is she's not going to fall. It's mainly fainting fits, but
Mm.
she's not going to fall down and bang her head or do something like that because without exception, her dog gives her this warning. And
Wow.
I've never really looked into this, but I am fascinated how dogs can be trained to sniff out drugs. I suppose they just let them know what a drug smells like, whatever, and then it detects it. So you can almost understand that. But how a dog learns to detect something either through its hearing, which is way above our hearing at certain levels, or through its more likely, I guess, through its nose, through what it smells, because dogs have got a much more powerful sense of smell than we do.
Mm.
The dog obviously smells something that says to him, "My owner's going to faint." So whatever he does, I don't know what he does, but I guess he barks at her, he pulls her, or whatever. Every time she sits down and then she faints, not for long. So when she comes round, life goes on. So
Wow.
to me, that is incredible,
Yeah.
incredible, and you really do pick up on the fact, as you said, that dogs are incredibly intelligent. So to be able to be trained to do those things, and we know that dogs have emotions. They can look very sad if a sibling animal should die or is ill.
Mm.
So yeah, they are. I don't have a dog myself, and a bit like you, really. I don't think I would want to be looking at the I mean yeah, the walking the dog is probably quite good if you've got the time to. You'd have to make the time to go and walk a dog. It's probably good for people who
Mm.
don't do much else to get the exercise. But yeah, I wouldn't want to commit myself to all that is involved in bringing up a dog, but I am very admiring of what dogs are and what they can do. That's why
Mm.
they're called, we won't say man's best friend, we'll say people's best friend. And they are really, aren't they?
They are, yeah. I mean, dogs are just, they're in a different level next to humans. Their level is just so, it's so sometimes when I hear about, dogs attacking, people, I think, well, they do more good than harm. That in my opinion. So you might hear of a dog attack in maybe 10 cases in a year. But then you don't hear about the blind, what's it called? Guide dogs,
Mm,
guide dogs that people use, the ones that police use to apprehend criminals, the ones that the drug enforcement agency uses to sniff out, like you said, to sniff out drugs at the airport. So, in my opinion, you have more good than harm that comes from it. And of course, people use dogs to guard a certain,
yeah.
actions, even homes. They use dogs to guard homes. Some people would get a dog for their elderly, relatives, to make sure that they're able to be kept safe. So I have so much admiration for what dogs do for us.
Mm.
I hope the dogs are listening.
Well, for some time now, I play chess once a week with a pal of mine.
Yeah.
We're both sort of chestnuts, chestnuts. That was quite a good unintentional comment, wasn't it? Chestnuts, yeah. We both like our chess. I used to play chess at school. I used to be in the chess club and all the rest of it. So it's a great game to play, a game of strategy.
Mm,
Well, I suppose about a year, 18 months ago, maybe a bit less than that, uh, this pal of mine, alternate weeks, because the other week we either play golf or something else. But
mm,
once a fortnight, we play chess, actually, usually at his place. So we were doing this, playing after a few weeks, and I started to notice that the neighbours, um, I used to think, wow, they got a really noisy pair of dogs, because every little while they would start barking, and I thought, well, it's not. I knew my friend didn't have any dogs, but it sort of been coming from that side of his house,
mm.
and I didn't say anything for quite a long time. I thought, well, I don't want to make out I find it off-putting or whatever. But eventually, after probably a few months of playing chess, I said to Don, I said, your neighbours, do those dogs bark all the time? Because when I'm here, they do two or three times, really noisy barking. And he looked at me like I was a complete idiot, which I suppose I was in a way. He said, they don't have any dogs. He said, that's my doorbell alarm. So if someone comes up to the door, the postman or put something through or rings on the bell or anything, his
Yeah.
alarm, these dogs bark like mad. So it sounds obviously to somebody they've got
Oh,
dogs inside. And the sound of it would certainly put me off if I was up to no good, or even if I was a postman. They're so
yeah.
realistic. Well, of course, once I said that, he said, "Oh, I don't need it on." And he said, "Really, we put it on sometimes later in the day, or not." So he turned it off, and I've never heard it since. But I did feel a bit stupid to think I didn't mention before these dogs that the neighbours must have had. It just shows how realistic the noise, the sound of them barking was. And I guess, particularly maybe, I mean, he doesn't live on his own, but if you're living on your own, maybe you'd feel safer with
Yeah.
something like that. If someone
Oh.
comes up too close to the front door at night, say, then the dogs would start to bark, and you might scarp her. So it's another sort of dog tale, really.
If you're up to no good, that is. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they are very, very useful to humans. I suppose they have been over the years, over the centuries,
Mm.
even, people do have things like that. Now, the next one that we're going to move to is a paranormal investigator.
All
Now,
right. Yeah.
Now I might think, yeah, all right, so paranormal, we hear that all the time. But first of all, do you believe in ghosts? You believe they exist?
That's a strange thing actually, because I thought today, if the conversation dries up at all, I thought I'll ask Cuz if he believes in ghosts. I really did. So that you've asked me instead. So we've obviously got something paranormal going on, you see. So that proves it. So next subject, please. No, I mean that's ESP, extrasensory perception.
Yeah,
Paranormal. Do I believe in ghosts? Again, that's I mean, it's a closed question, so I suppose that the closed answer would be yes or no. Yes, I do.
yeah,
No, I don't. And I'm not sure I would say yes or no. What I would say is there are enough stories, and okay, you get some people who probably invent these things, but I think there are enough proven, legitimate stories of
mm,
events that people have experienced or seen to suggest that there's something more to this than maybe we would say. You know, if you some people they're very black and white. They would say if you said, "Do you believe in ghosts?" No, it's a load of rubbish. You know, people were a bit mad if they say that. Whereas someone else will say the opposite. They say, "Well, I do, and here's the evidence." And if you actually look, for example, if you Google some what you might say interesting or amazing ghost stories, factual stories, um, I mean, I've done this before myself. I think some interesting stories do come up, which are really inexplicable. No logical reason. I mean, for example, a haunted house, but I think there are some houses which have a certain presence where maybe a minister of the church has gone in to exorcise something, a spirit perhaps, but there are clear and documented examples of objects which can, let's say, fly around the room, which move, either fall off or not just one, but two or three things can happen. Now, that suggests that there is an energy which obviously we can't really see, which is why a lot of people say, well, it's not true. But then, you know, we can't see the air around us, but we wouldn't be here if it wasn't there. We
yeah.
can't see the wind. We can see the effects of the wind if it's a windy day. So there's lots of things we can't see, which we know exist. I mean, another one, a bit slightly different, but is you could say love. Do we see love? Well, we don't see love. We see the effects of love, somebody loving somebody else, loving their child, but we don't actually see something called love, even though we know it is there. Most people, many people, not all, many
Mm,
people experience that love for somebody else. So it doesn't wash with me when someone says, "No, I don't believe any of that," because I've always taken the view that there's far more going on around us that we would be utterly, what's the word, totally amazed to find out was the case. Again, so if you can see, not a map isn't really the word, but if sometimes they can produce a picture of a situation perhaps outside, and it shows all of the radio waves, the wavelengths, the telephone connections, the mobile phone and it's they're zooming all over the place, everywhere, totally invisible to the human eye, but they're all around us, which is why sometimes, I mean, in the early days of the mobile phone, it
mm,
was considered that because some people had it up to their ear for quite a lot of the day, if that was to do with their job, like selling on the beach timeshare places. I had a customer whose brother was doing that, so it must be some years ago, probably in the, I don't know, he was telling me about it well after it had happened.
mm,
But I think it probably happened in the 80s when people were selling timeshares to people, constantly had this phone to his head, and he died. After only a few months of having brain cancer diagnosed. Now, that's obviously an anecdotal case. It's not a statistic necessarily of saying that mobile phones cause cancer, but maybe like anything, it's moderation, isn't it? If we overdo
mm,
something, subject our heads to what comes out of a mobile phone,
mm,
then it can do damage to some people. We know these things can exist. If you push two like poles on a magnet together,
mm.
they'll repel. You can't see why, but they won't lock together, unlike an unlike pole, if you know what I mean. So there are lots of things around us we can't see. And I personally believe, perhaps to come to answer your question, do I believe in ghosts? Yeah, I do believe that there are things going on. Maybe is it ghosts from people from the past? I mean, they say Lady Jane Grey wanders Hampton Court Palace, things like that, and that people have seen them. Well, I don't know that I would go along with that. All I would
Mm,
say is I keep open-minded. I don't sort of fashionably like things that most people don't like or whatever. But
mm,
I think I'm realistic enough to know that if people genuinely say, "Well, I saw something," you often hear. I read something the other day which said somebody, I forget who, but saw someone in their family sitting on the end of their bed when they woke up in the middle
mm,
of the night, and then they were gone, and it turns out they had died. I think died in that previous number of hours. So was that an invented story? I didn't get the impression it was. So I
mm,
think these things do happen. But
mm.
do I believe in ghosts? I'd have to say yes and no because I've qualified it that there are things there. Whether you will call them a ghost, I don't know. What about you? Do you believe in ghosts?
Yeah, I think I'm a bit like you with the ghost thing, where I believe there are certain elements in the spirit world that is responsible for all these paranormal activities. Yeah, so yeah, I do. Yes and no. Not in the
Mm,
way that people would like to portray on television where they say, "Oh yeah, oh I just felt something," or throw cameras everywhere and all these sound detecting, or paranormal activity detectors that they
mm,
use in the so I don't really I think that is just making a show really, of
yeah.
a program more. But yeah, I do believe there are um, activities around perpetrated by certain, spirit forces. Yeah, so I do believe that they are there. But the thing is, I don't think they would disturb you unless you disturb them. It's like a hornest or a bee nest. You see a bee nest, they're there just doing their business, they go about their business.
Can you make that noise again? I didn't quite catch that. How did it go? Ooh, okay, yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, so it's like a bee nest, they're there just doing their thing, and they go about their own business. But if you went there and you poked it, then you're looking
Yeah,
for trouble then.
you'll cop it.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's how I look at the paranormal world or the paranormal activity. And I believe they do attach them. Yeah, go on, sorry, please.
Yeah, no, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Something
Yeah.
else that came to mind. I've already mentioned when my sister died 3 years ago, and we had a funeral service and then a
Mm,
wake, so to speak. The wake was in a hotel down there in Sittingbourne, where she lived, and quite a lot of people there, and groups of people who didn't really know each other, but there was a lot of food, so you sort of mixed a bit. But in one of the rooms, there was essentially my family and all of us, us little lot, so to speak, and there were other groups around. Well, once we were in there, we sort of brought our food back in there. We had drinks in there, so we were there for a couple of hours. And soon after we actually were in there was this little moth. It was a beautiful moth. I mean, sort of that sort of size, so
mm,
beautiful. It had incredible designs on the wings, and it was like a small butterfly, but I think it was a moth. Something you don't often see, to be honest,
mm,
or I certainly don't. Well, this moth, it was quite incredible. And at the time, we just didn't think much of it. But gradually, as the time went on, we did. It kept landing on different ones of us. It landed on me quite a lot, this little moth on my sleeve.
Mm,
And I just sort of looked at it because ordinarily, if you're out and about and something lands on you, you sort of flick it away. But this moth was far too beautiful, and it was in this still room, very bright, sunny room as it happened. And then it would go and land on someone else, on other members of my family, etc. Uh, and we thought this is really strange because it wouldn't leave the room. When
mm,
somebody went out, they came back, it was there. And it was there the whole time that we were having this celebration of Sue's life, I suppose. And it was afterwards where the suggestion was made that maybe that was Sue just, I don't know, reassuring her family, her people that she's okay. And although to someone listening to this who perhaps doesn't believe in such things, they say, what a load of rubbish. They're entitled to say that if they want. But those of us there, and there are probably us 10 of us, 12 of us in that room, we all became conscious of this moth in the midst of our discussions and chats and haven't
mm,
seen you for a long time and all this sort of stuff. But it just was there. It was unobtrusive. And it just, so when it landed on, certainly on me, and I think others, it stayed there for quite a long time. And I just carried on talking. And as I say, it was suggested subsequently that maybe it was Sue's spirit. And who knows? But interestingly, I think it's interesting, about 3, 4 weeks ago, Kimberly and Lucy's grandmother from their dad's side, she died. She was 87, I think. She was an old lady.
mm,
And the girls were quite cut up. And in fact, about her, because they used to see her probably only once a month, but they were quite close to her.
mm,
And Iris, the lady, had said she didn't want a funeral. She left a message to that effect. And so they didn't feel they could do that. I think they're going to have some sort of get together, that family, at some point.
mm,
But it's very strange because I think it was the day afterwards. Um, Kimberly came out in the car with us, and on the window of my car, there was a moth similar size to the one at Sue's funeral. Now, I've never seen one since Sue's funeral 3 years ago. And I
mm,
don't really ever see, I mean, I may have seen a moth like that over the years, but literally once in a blue moon. But this moth was actually on my window. And you're not going to believe what I'm going to say in a minute, but it was on my window. And I thought, and Kimberly said, look, there's a moth there. Wow. And I said, we both said, do you think that's Iris? And we said, we don't know. And I started the car up, it still stayed there. And I sort of gently drove off out of the garage. And eventually, I suppose the breeze was too much for it. And but Kimberly, bless her, because she was very upset about losing her grandmother, she
mm,
said, "I really feel that was Iris because we never see these things otherwise."
mm,
And then I think the following weekend, when Lucy had been away at her boyfriend's that week, and she came back the following weekend. She went down there, I think, because she was so down about losing her grandmother. Anyway, she came back, and we were telling her about this moth, or Kimberly was, and she said, "Oh, this happened at Sue's." She said, "I don't really remember that. I don't know whether I was in that room with you." Or she said, "I've never seen this. Why doesn't Iris do that for me?" Well, she was saying this in where we live. And the next day we went out in the car, and you know what I'm going to say? There was one on the passenger window where Lucy was sitting in the front. It suddenly appeared, came up, and I mean, we were stunned into silence. We were,
wow.
because it was like Lucy had said, "Oh, I want evidence of Iris still being okay." And
Mm,
then this moth appeared. Now, it's nothing like that has happened since or before those two examples. And so I think things happen. I think things do happen that, you know, were those moths some sort of, something to do with the two people who died, and it's kind of saying goodbye or reassuring, or it may be nothing of the sort. It may just be absolute coincidence, because coincidences happen. Let's
mm,
face it, they do happen. But my gut feeling is that there was more to those incidents than might be thought to be the case.
Yeah, wow. Thanks for sharing that. That's the kind of stuff this program is made of.
Well, it's a bit weird, isn't it, really?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
some say I'm a bit weird, so that's I take that as a badge of honor, really.
Are you trying to steal my badge of honor?
Two weird guys together. Yeah.
Now, this other thing, it's a bit of a funny one. It was about this uh, food chain called Burger King. Now, I'm going to ask you first because when I read it, I thought, hmm, I didn't know that. And certainly the writer didn't know that. And a lot of people that he interviewed didn't know about what this is about. So, Burger King's mysterious breakfast menu. Did you know that? Did you know that they had a breakfast? I know. No, I did not
Well,
know.
I think McDonald's and Burger King they probably have a breakfast menu, but I don't. I've never been to a Burger King breakfast menu. I may have been there occasionally for lunch, but no,
Yeah,
I don't
I've
know something anything about their breakfast. No.
I don't know about their breakfast. Would you like would you like to know what their breakfast consisted of?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so golden hash brown, and egg, cheese butty, uh sandwich, um, which is close to an English breakfast as you can get without the, I'm sure this is just what they've mentioned there. This is what one of them was having. But it is as close to a, I mean, I know McDonald's breakfast is, it consists of hash brown. You could have a burger with an egg or and cheese in it. I've had that. But this one is saying a cheese butty as well. So, I didn't know that. I didn't know that, but I just thought about Burger King as a fast food restaurant where, you go in there, they
Mm,
serve breakfast. Well, there you go, bro.
I know now, but
You know,
they
no.
can't have that. I was recently. I think I told you last time that on a holiday recently I was in well Barcelona, but also somewhere in France, Toulon, I think it was. And certainly in the case of the Spanish, they had we walked around one of their big squares, and there were actually a McDonald's and a Burger King amongst many other kind of eating places, and none of them opened until midday because I
Oh,
think
oh,
and they opened then, so you wouldn't have a breakfast there. I don't know
no.
quite why that is, but it's just I suppose the climate's better. The well, we've had it this year, but the weather's always very good, and I think people in Spain don't like to get out of bed too early. It's as simple as that.
No,
So lots
no.
of places, lots of shops don't open till 12 o'clock.
All
So it
right.
wouldn't happen there, would it?
It wouldn't. It wouldn't. But it happened in England, according to this article.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
This is all we've got time for on the Alien Spaceship. Thanks for joining us, our listeners on our live stream, and those that are going to be catching up later. So join us again next week as we bring you more interesting topics and conversations on the Alien Spaceship. I've been Emmy Hickens, and he calls me Cuz.
And I'm Trevor Gere, and he calls me bruv.
Oh yeah, he calls me Cuz. Yeah. Right. Okay. So it's a goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me too.